And we're on. Welcome back to another podcast from Nobody Cares About Dad. You were laughing because you thought I was going to do it wrong.
I did. I preempted it.
Oh, no, I seen you going. I thought, what have I done? Yeah. No, I got it right this time. Welcome back to another podcast from Nobody Cares About Dad. This week, as ever, joined by my co-host, AD.
Hey.
How you doing, mate?
I'm melting. I'm melting. I know we've just had a conversation about the heat, and it's not hot for most people.
Yeah.
It's minging. It's honking. Word of the week, honking. There you go.
Honking. Yeah. I've been in the beer garden all day today. There's no air conditioning in my office whatsoever. So as soon as I walked in the door, I was just wet.
Yeah.
So I was like, nah, I've got to get out of here.
Mate, I picked Dexter up today. He finished school today for summer. Literally ran to the gates, grabbed him, ran to the car, windows up, aircon on.
Yeah.
He was looking at me like, what are we doing? What's happened? But nice meeting, mate.
Look, speaking of the heat, today we're heading over to Arizona. Today's guest is Ira Hughes. Ira Hughes coming all the way in from Arizona. How you doing, mate?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on, guys.
No, appreciate you coming on. We were having just a conversation before the podcast started, and he was sort of saying the weather that we're crying about is a nice day for you.
I will say there's an aspect that we didn't talk about, which is humidity. In Arizona, we often lack that humidity component. So when it is 122 degrees Fahrenheit on the hottest day ever, or the 50 C, that the conversion rate, there's like no humidity. It's like 3 or 4% humidity on those days. So, but like lately, it's been around 100, like 104, but the humidity's been at 35%, which we cry about, and Texas would be so happy about, right? Because they're like 78 to 90%, and so it's all relative to what you're used to. My wife, being born and raised in Arizona, just hates the humidity, so she just loses her mind. But I'm born in Kansas City, so I was a little bit more used to it.
No,
it feels. Go on, my guy.
No, I was going to say it feels like about 150% humidity today, but I just double checked. It's 70%.
That's hot for 70% and that temperature for sure, man. No doubt.
And a true British style will always complain.
Well, I was going to say we wouldn't be a British-based podcast if we weren't complaining about the weather.
No,
if
it was awesome. Raining, it would be too wet. Snowing, it's too cold. Sunny, it's too hot. You can't win.
At least if it's warm, a cold beer always makes more sense.
Yeah, it's the one thing that you have. It's the one thing you have to go to if you're a Brit at a networking event. The weather.
I'm always about the weather too with the desert, no doubt. I can always up somebody, right? They're like, it's negative 35 here in Chicago. I was like, well, it's kind of hot on the deck out. I might have to go inside because I'm warm right now. Or the opposite, where they're just like, oh, it's a hot day today, and I'm like, you don't know hot.
Ira, what's the situation on the ground in Arizona with COVID? What's it been like?
It's actually been pretty good. We've handled it really well. We did have a little surge in cases early on, and I feel like we got control under that after some of those stay-at-home orders were done, and then we really start getting back to work and getting back to everything going on. And since then, I think we were one of the first states to lift the mask mandates, even in our schools, and we really haven't seen any uptick in regards to increase in cases with that mandate moved at all. So that's been really good, and our schools are back in session for in person starting in a couple of weeks when they go back into school, and so everything's been great. I hate to say it feels normal. It's cautiously optimistic. That's probably the best way to put it. That we're turning that corner. I had a long winter of unemployment due to COVID reasons, so definitely felt some of that heat along the way. So I'm excited for things to get back to normal.
We had our July the 4th the other day with what was called Freedom Day. And it was like all the restrictions lifted, no masks, everybody back from home, and it was the nightclubs have all been shut. I mean, I didn't go, but I'm married, I'm not allowed out. But like most people were out 12 o'clock Sunday night at the nightclubs because that's when the restrictions were Monday morning. Okay. So
it's just good to see faces again. I mean, you don't realize how much you miss seeing people's faces, and then all of a sudden you see, wow.
It's when you forget you're not wearing a mask and you still try and say something about somebody. You forget you could hide behind your mask before.
That's funny. True, that is a good point.
I've been amazed actually at how many people are still actually wearing their masks. Like
I still put mine on.
Been shocked. Do you?
Which is weird, yeah. But it's just so normal. Shut up. It's just so normal just to put it on as I walk into a shop. I went in today and I was with one of my friends and he turned around to me. I was thinking, what are you staring at? Have I got something on my face? And he was like, yeah, your mask. Get it off. I was like, oh, I forgot. So I forgot I've gone the other way.
Yeah.
But now I forgot to take it off, not put it on. So
yeah, autopilot, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
We definitely had that funny in between, right? Where you didn't have to wear a mask, especially if you were vaccinated. And because I travel for work, it's one of the first things I wanted to do because I don't want to go get COVID, in hopes that it prevents it, right? And I didn't want to go get COVID and then go see my mom and get her sick, even though she's been vaccinated. I wanted to just reduce every possibility possible, right? And if I was going to be traveling, I wanted to make sure I was doing the best for my family coming home with, the best possible results. So maybe I still get it and have it, but at least with this, I had a chance. So I got vaccinated as soon as my age group was allowed. But then, they dropped the mandate pretty quickly around having to wear a mask after you're vaccinated. But how do you know that you're vaccinated, right? And so you go in a store and they're still wearing masks and you're like, well, I don't have to wear one. But I kind of just put one on because you don't want to be that guy, right? You don't want to be that asshole. It's just no.
Everyone just watches you.
Exactly, right? And now it's kind of almost gone the opposite way, what you're just saying, where you see someone wear a mask. But I also read there's some like people that enjoyed the whole idea of not being seen, right? The ability to be hidden in a way, right? Of the mask, and they almost don't want to take the mask off because they liked that situation.
Yeah, I imagine for people in the public eye, the whole wearing a mask has been like great for a lot of people because they've been able to just walk down the street.
Yeah, I've not been followed anymore by paparazzi or anything. I've been able to roam free. It's been
good. So Ira, your story was obviously I read your message and obviously your profile and what you were sort of saying about what happened to you is obviously it's a heartbreaking story. I obviously shared it with AD. So look, really just keen to just explore that and just find out what happened, how you dealt with it, if you have dealt with it.
Just more your mindset on it. It's just incredible to be talking, like as silly as it sounds, just to be able to almost again that word normal, like live a normal life, kind of speaking to every day. But we're complaining about the weather, and then you put it in context, and you think, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So unbelievable.
But I think again, not to normalize your story, Ira, but the whole point of us starting this podcast was for people, for men especially, to share stories and unfortunately, you aren't the only person that has been through what you have, and but obviously at the time it makes people feel like it's the end of the world, and I think if the whole point was if we got guys to be able to share their stories and hear other people talk about what happened to them, how they dealt with it, and if that helps somebody deal with it in a slightly different way who might be struggling with it, then that's what we set this up to do. To be honest.
Yeah, that's why I thought we would, have a great conversation in regards to that, and so, diving a little bit into that, right? So, in 2015, well, it goes back even farther, but to get into the gist of it, in 2015, my 3-year-old daughter at the time got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So even that hurts to say today, right? So it might be an emotional call, but
sure.
I wear them all on the outside, man. But I think you're right. Talking about these things is super important because other people need to realize that you can live through this stuff, right? And there is life after you get through all those pieces. You definitely have to process a lot of the weights, I guess, if you will, in the situation as you're working your way through the journey. But that journey comes with a lot of stuff on the other side of it. And you have to make sure that you're enjoying those pieces along the way. So, kind of go into the story a little bit more, I was actually reading back through the blog that I had somewhat created during the journey. I created a website and just really wrote my heart out every day and every step along the way and talked about the different things that were going on from the first diagnosis on. And I just kept up to date. There's a lot of people that I really didn't do Facebook much. I think this really drove me to be on Facebook, to be honest.
Sure.
Because people wanted updates and people want to be connected. And I'm like, I don't want to be connected with all these people and seeing all my stuff. I don't want to be. There's so much, no showing who you are on Facebook, and I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that shares my soul with anybody, whether they want to hear it or not. And maybe it'll work out for them. But I think that there's good in that, right? And I like to hear other people's stories because I think we benefit from that. So kind of going into it again. My daughter was actually Audrey was born with spina bifida and a tethered spinal cord at birth. So when she came out, the doctor just did their everyday quick check and said, there's 1 in 10,000 chance that this little dimple is something. We just need to get a quick ultrasound. You want to walk over to us through the hallway to the kids section of the hospital, and we'll do a quick ultrasound, make sure everything's cool, and we'll be good. And from day one, nothing ever was good. So we found out that she had a tethered spinal cord, as he suspected, and it turned out she had spina bifida as well. So we met with a surgeon when she was 3 days old, and he said, hey, I'm going to need to go in and fix this spina bifida, and then I'm also going to see what I can't do about this tethered spinal cord and detaching it from the wall of her spinal cavity. So what that really means is, like, she has a spina bifida occulta, which is closed, and then it doesn't, like, the spinal cord's not coming out of the body, which it sometimes does. Weird stuff, man. And then hers attached itself to the wall of the spinal column, or the casing that our spinal cord sits in. So if it's untreated, when you bend over, it will continually stretch, and eventually you'll start to lose some usability as you grow older. Usually they find that around 12 or 14 if they don't detect it in early stages like this. So we found out day 4 that she would have to be 9 pounds and 9 weeks old for a surgery, and that would be surgery number 1.
Okay.
So they dove in. They said, it should be a routine repair. No worries. We'll get in there. Super awesome doc. Like, one of the most renowned docs in the Southwest. He's, just a great dude. Has a great backstory, and was very confident he could get everything done he needed to get done. He had a guy in there with him. Again, super awesome surgeon. They tag team it, and they were going to take care of everything. And with every surgery we had, the outcome was never normal. When she came out, they were able to fix the spina bifida. They were able to fix that tethered spinal cord, but they said her spinal cord was a different color than they'd ever seen before, and that it had this mass in it. And they took some samples, and it was benign, so no cancer, but they didn't know what it was, and they're just going to have to watch it, because if they took it, they would definitely take her functionality, and they didn't feel the risk was worth taking. And hindsight's always 2020. So 3 years forward, and we're going through all the stuff. She's doing good. She's acting like every normal day kid. She's 3 years old, and she starts to regress in some potty training stuff. And we're like, that's weird, We do think she's not paying attention, right? So we do what every parent does. We discipline them. And we're like, hey, you need to go to the bathroom. And then eventually she gets frustrated. And she's like, listen, I don't know what you guys want from me, as a 3-year-old can. But, you get to what she's saying, and you're like, okay, let's go see the doc. And we did scans and instantly saw that she had a tumor. And then we did scans with contrast, and we're 90% sure that she had cancer. So then we scheduled our next surgery. And so I'd say within a week, 2 weeks, I want to say, they went in and went to remove the tumor, expecting to be an everyday typical type of tumor that they see on a regular basis within spinal cords. And unfortunately, that wasn't what it was. So they thought they were going to be able to use a laser, be able to remove everything, no worries at all. It turned out that it was Rhabdomysarcoma, which is a pretty aggressive cancer. That being said, 80% of kids that catch it early actually survive 5+ years. Unfortunately, with cancer, you're only looking 5-year survival rates in most cases. And then everything past that's just gravy. So we were diagnosed, and then found out we were only the 4th kid to have rhabdomysarcoma that they know of that actually originated within the spinal cord, which was most likely a result of that unknown tissue they saw when they did the first surgery, right?
Yeah.
So that had metastasized and had spread to the brain and the upper spinal cord.
Jesus Christ. I mean, it goes without saying, doesn't it? Just cancer's just shit. It's just
total
horrible thing. Even in the age we live in, it's still just as horrible now as it was, years and years and years ago. And it's just
well,
the thing it does to the body is just.
Yep.
And the body's an amazing thing. The body is an incredible piece of kit. But this, no better word. This fucking cancer just, mate.
Yeah, it's rough, and we don't have any new treatments either, right? So that's the other reason to talk about this type of stuff. You know, she's getting 30 to 40-year-old treatments for cancers that we've been fighting for how long? Like, it's not that we just found out about this stuff, right? And so they're doing a great job with, you know, different cancers. You know, like there's a number of cancers that they've done a really good job on where the survival rates, not just 5-year outlooks are really good, like 98+%. And, you know, there's obviously cases with leukemia that don't go the right way. But when it comes to the treatment of leukemia, man, they've come leaps and bounds ahead. And because the bulk of the kids that get cancer have one of those blood cancers, right? You know, and it's so hard because the treatment for leukemia often gives solid state cancer later on, solid tumor cancer later on. And the treatment of tumors often gives leukemia later on because we don't have any good medicines.
No.
And it's such a fight, right? Only 4% of the U.S. government funding for cancer research a year goes toward pediatric cancer. The rest of it's going towards adults. And it takes years and years for that information to trickle down to the kids because they're so worried about using it within them, right? So it's definitely only 4% right now goes towards that, right? And 1 in 285 kids in the world gets cancer.
Jeez.
I don't know if you know that statistic. I mean, that's a rough statistic if you really think about it. You know, you don't feel like you know that many people until you're in the world of it. And unfortunately, I know way too many. But you know, that being said, it's just something that I hope that they get better at. And the beautiful part is I'm a technologist as well, right? I love all technology, and I like to read books about what's coming. And there's a couple of awesome books. The Future's Faster Than You Think is one that talks about how there's this real emergence right now of all of these different techs, right? There's this exponential wave of learning and ways that we're addressing biomedicine and, you know, quantum computing and all these other techs that all converging at the same time is going to create this tsunami of shift, this exponential shift in technology that I truly believe is going to revolutionize how we do all this stuff. I mean, mRNA in itself is a great example of a technological leap that we took because of Corona, right? And the ability to take that leap, forced leap, to get to where we need to get to, and then all the things that MNR is already predictively been maybe even able to solve, and then you add the quantum computing and AI and ML, and man, things are going to get really exciting. And I think that, you know, every day we see more stuff come out about, you know, we've identified one common protein in all cancers. It was announced in like the last week. Like that stuff is what's exciting to me for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing that what you can. Like, it's obviously hard in the moment, but when you cast your mind, you know, 10 years, 20 years down the line, you kind of got to live with that hope that there's got to be something. Because you take COVID, for instance, I mean, completely different, but
yeah, sure.
In a nutshell, you know, we were forced to create a vaccine. So over here in the UK, they were forced to create a vaccine, and they did it. It was just out of nowhere. It just came out. There was like a vaccine. So then everyone started getting this vaccine. Then all of a sudden it mutated. So there was another vaccine which actually took care of that mutation and any other mutation since. And you think, wow, we've been forced into doing that. And you're in the background a lot of the time, not knowing what people are working on, not knowing how hard these guys are working, how much effort they are putting in, you know, to finding these you know, preventative measures, these cures, things to prolong everything. And it is an exciting future for all the technology coming out, but it doesn't detract from the past. You know, it
doesn't.
It's that you can be happy about, okay, yeah, soon in 5-10 years we could have this medicine, but then is that frustration of, well, why the fuck wasn't that ready 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Like,
it's all a numbers game, though, right? I think that everything's a numbers game, and we have to look at it that way. And you know, I think through my journey, I've had to, you know, ask myself those questions, right? So, you know, they're like, the perfect example is, you know, Rhabdomysarcoma is one of the rare cancers. It's not a common cancer, right? 1 in 285 kids get cancer. 1 in 1,000 of those kids get Rhabdomysarcoma, and then 4 of those kids ever had it in the spinal cord, right? So the doctor gave us a diagnosis day 1 and said, hey, there's been 4 cases that I can find, and just so you know, nobody survived a year.
Wow.
So that's where we get to start with. And then, then they start breaking down. Okay, they sit us down. We have a team of doctors and nurses in the room, in the oncology suite, and they're like, okay, here's all of the medicines that we printed out the informational sheets for that we're going to give your daughter starting in a week. And then you look at what they do, and then you look at the side effects, and you're like, okay, so 4 of the 8 medicines we're going to give my daughter will probably give her cancer because she has cancer. Dig it. Okay, let's do it, right? Like, you're like, shit, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
You're not going to say no. And that being said, we actually did say no when it came to radiation, and they had to find a workaround. Which, if you're ever in a medical situation where you're a medical advocate for your family, for your parents, for your kids, never let the doctor tell you what to do. Push hard. For us, we went through all the chemos. We looked at each other and said, "What are you going to do? Let's say yes. Let's do our research. Let's follow it through. Let's get started. It's an aggressive cancer. Let's get after it as quick as we can. We found it early. Let's punish it as much as we can." And so we went at it, right? And then the doctor comes in and he goes, "Yeah, she's going to need radiation too to her spinal cord and her brain, and that's going to cause her to probably be deaf and blind and stunted growth." It's like, so what's the outlook without radiation? Because I'm not going to make my daughter be deaf and blind and maybe not able to walk just so that she can live another year.
Yeah.
Like, there's some quality of life stuff that you really have to consider, and you have to peel back all those layers and figure out, what's okay. And that wasn't okay with us. And we sat back and we said no. And the doctor came back and he was pissed, man. And he's like, we're gonna do it. And I'm like, over my dead damn body, you're gonna do it, right? Like, we're gonna find another way. It's a big world, man. Can't we maybe do some research and figure out if there's something else? Yeah. And luckily they were connected with MD Anderson, and we reached out to the doc there, and he's like, "Well, what about proton?" And I'm like, "Tell me more about proton." And so proton therapy is this really amazing radiation that it's really pinpointed and allows for them to only dig in the radiation as far as you need it to, and it stops. It's like using a shotgun versus using a laser, right? And so the original method was, we're going to blast her with a shotgun and say what happens. I'm like, no. The second method was, we're going to find the areas that we need to irradiate, and we're going to laser focus just those areas, and then the spinal cord. And there's a huge IQ drop that comes with, if she's able to survive through all of that, what's that going to look like? And we never made a decision of, is she going to survive? It's when she survives, what does that look like, right? And I mean, to give away the ending, she doesn't, right? And so, but through the whole way, we were always focused on, okay, if we give her this care, what is the short term and what is the long term? And we really have to plan for that long term. Otherwise, what's the point in doing it? Is it to keep her to live for us, or is it to give her a life worth living?
Yeah.
And those are the things we had to look at.
Yeah. I had I was going to say a similar situation, but it's not the same. But it's we lost our mum 3 years ago to multiple sclerosis. And I don't know if you know about multiple sclerosis, but it's one of the, in the worst form. You lose all function. They think that you have all brain function, but your body just shuts down completely. So she couldn't move, she couldn't eat on her own,
trapped in your own body.
Yeah, but just trapped in her own body, and the nurses would, because she would often choke, and they would come to us and say, do you want us to resuscitate her? And at first I was like, 100%, yeah, like, of course I do. And then it sort of got to the point where we were like, but what's a quality of life? Like, right. Would she want to be in that position? And we had to in the end say no, like, do not resuscitate if she does go. Unfortunately, she did, but
it's where that empathy has to come in, right? You have to have that deep empathy. I mean, of course, what would they want in the situation? But like, if it was me, like, would I want to live that way? And that's a hard decision, man. It's hard to make that call, right? And even have to make that call in the end to quit treating. I think that was probably one of the hardest calls for us. And I bought it to the end, right? No, the hard one.
Gotcha. I mean,
Ira, how long from diagnosis to the end?
Yeah. So 2.5 years ish. She was diagnosed like May 28th of 2015. and she passed on September 29th of 17. So, but that being said, like it was a ride too, right? Like there was lots of highs along the way. So, you know, I especially like the message and like to convey the message that it's a shitty situation, but your attitude doesn't have to be shitty towards it, right? Like there's a lot of things looking back on that I loved about the situation, that it forced our family to live every moment, right? Just to dig in and just really dig out every moment we had of every situation that we got along the way. Her diagnosis went for, or her treatment went for a while, right? The onset was 54 weeks to 80 weeks of chemo, depending on what things looked like on the original assessment, right? And this was like high aggressive chemos. It blasted her white cells. We were inpatient for every holiday for probably the first year. We spent Christmas in the holiday in the hospital, 4th of July in the hospital, you know, freaking even like Easter. Like we did not miss a holiday. Like we pretty much knew every special services that would come to like brighten up the oncology holiday weekends. They'd be like, "Oh, you're here again." I'm like, "Didn't you expect us?" Like, we try to make sure we're here. And they brought us great food, and there's amazing people along the way. And I will say, man, anyone that's willing to go into pediatric oncology, whether it's the doctors or the nurses or the caregivers, so anybody that's willing to be a part of that world are very special people. I mean, just phenomenal special people to be able to choose to go work with these kids and get so emotionally attached, and knowing that these outcomes are not always great outcomes.
I was going to say, like, to deal with, to cope with that,
nothing but admiration for those guys, for you and your family as well.
I appreciate that.
It's just that,
but we didn't choose. The thing is, we didn't choose, man. We had to be there. Like, and it goes even the COVID work with people, right? All the people that worked thousands of hours during the COVID, and I already had that insight and that love and that empathy for them. So when I saw that, I knew, you know, the care that they're going in, and the people that become nurses, the people that become doctors, you know, most of them, you know, some of it obviously do it for a God complex, but I appreciate them because they're awesome. But, you know, there's those other people, those caregivers, those nurses that just come in day in, day out. They give the chemo, they give the stuff, they clean up the puke, they clean up the poop, and they do it with a smile, and they love on your family along the way. And they weren't there just for my daughter. You know, there was a time when, so, you know, again, we're all over on the story, but, you know, getting through to, we did the first rounds of chemo. We went through the first protocol. We did our radiation. We had to go to Houston for 6 weeks and live down there in a Ronald McDonald house. Met a ton of amazing people along the way. Amazing doctor with the most empathy in the world that truly went in it for the right reasons, right? His dharma was clearly to fix people. And he loved on the families and he loved on the kids. And he's just a great dude. And he's at MD Anderson, Dr. Harrison, just a great guy. And he's also one of the foremost experts on Rhabdomysarcoma in the world. And he just does everything. He knows everybody. I'm a guy that doesn't stop until I get answers. So I was reaching out to every expert in the world. And one day he called me. He's like, all my friends are calling me, telling me you're calling them. So I got this. And I'm like, all right, man. I spun all this stuff. So if you say you got this, I'll trust you now. But I appreciate that. But, you know, so we stayed in Houston. We got radiation. And then we thought we won. The scans were clean.
Wow.
No evidence of disease, which was huge, right? Like, we fought through everything. Didn't think we'd live a year. This is October of 16, not October of 16. This is August in, I want to say, that sounds about right. August and September of 16. And we found out, we took scans and we're clear. There's no tumors. There's no active. Everything's looking great. She's feeling good. Her counts are up. Her body's feeling great. You know, she's the most resilient kid ever, man. And she just kept rocking it. She kept fighting it. She never complained. She was always happy, you know, and it was unbelievable, right? And we had a huge news thing done on us and how she'd be cancer and blah, 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 and all these great things. And we were always cautiously optimistic as always, right? But it was a celebration. It was a moment we took the time to celebrate. It was a moment that we relaxed and we came together as a family and just enjoyed stuff, right? And we actually, along the way, got connected with the baseball team, the Cubs, out of Chicago. Yeah. And it was through their spring training. They actually spring trained down here in Phoenix, and it was through a hospital event. And my daughter met Clark the Cub, their mascot, and fell in love with him. And as everybody that met my daughter did, he instantly fell in love with her. And that bond was forever. And through that, we got more and more connected with the team. We actually met Joe and Jay Madden, who have always and continue to be amazing to our family. And they actually had a Pediatric Cancer Awareness Day, which they do every year in September. September is Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month. And they invited our daughter Audrey to throw out the opening pitch at Wrigley Field, which in baseball is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And so we got to go out, we got to meet all the guys, and spend some time with the players. And it's a phenomenal experience for us. We were in that happy state of not having to fight, not having to do chemo, not having to go to the hospital, just pretending like we were normal people again. Which, as we get out of this COVID, more people now have understanding of what that actually felt like than did back then, right? Shelter in place. I mean, if you're a cancer kid, you have no counts, you shelter in place all the time. You can't go out into public because of everything everyone was worried with COVID, right? Like anything can be an infection. COVID was so, drastically infectious that nobody wanted to be out, right? So it's the same thing when you're fighting cancer. We've done all that stuff before. We'd felt those things, and the reemergence of us and having counts and being able to go anywhere we wanted to and not have to worry about that, and to travel on a plane and not freak out and stuff. It was awesome. It was just a great experience with the Cubs organization, and like I said, they continue to love on our family still today. And then we came back and we did our 3-month scans, and cancer was back. Oh, yeah. And it had spread more. And so that was the moment we realized we were running out of options, because we had gone so hard on the levels of radiation and chemotherapy we'd given her. It's not like we went half in and we still had half to go. Yeah. We threw the book at her, man. And we just said, you know what? We got one chance at this. And that's all you really get when it turns out it's cancer. Every time you have to fight it again, you drastically reduce your chances of beating and winning that fight. And so we started, another routine. We went back to the doctor at MD Anderson. They weren't willing to do the surgery in Arizona. And again, like I said, I don't take a no. And so I called the doc at MD Anderson. I said, hey, this is what we got. They're not doing the things I want them to do. He said, can you be on a plane in here tomorrow? I said, yeah, I'll pack my family up and we'll be there tomorrow. I flew my family out. I drove myself. And so we'd have the van, and met them at the airport. We got them there. That time we rented an Airbnb, and we showed up the next day for scans. Doctor looked at her that day, said, yeah, I'll operate her on her tomorrow. And we took as much of the cancer out as we could to give her as many days as she could from that, knowing that that's what we were doing going in. So we got through that. And unfortunately, the day we found out that the cancer was still continuing after all of the protocols and started another chemo round, it wasn't working, was the day before we left for our Make-A-Wish trip. So we went into that with heavy hearts. But she wanted to go to what she called Princess Land Fairy World, which was Disney World. And so Make-A-Wish has an amazing foundation down there that everybody connects into from all over the world, called Give Kids the World. And they have like 200 rooms, and they're like duplexes, and like big room for the kids, little room for the parents, because who matters. Yeah. And we got to go spend time at Disneyland or Disney World, and she wanted to focus on all Frozen level things because she was in love with Frozen. I think I saw that movie 1,000 times while we were inpatient from time to time. Every hospital had it on their thing, so she loved to watch it. We watched it a ton, and if you have kids, you've seen it too many times.
Yeah.
So we got through that, and then we progressed through, and then we found a phase 1 trial, because I don't take no for an answer. We found a phase 1 trial in California through another hospital, because our original hospital refused to quit treating, or refused to keep treating her, even though MD Anderson agreed that it was okay. While we tried to find another solution. So I think we maybe lost time there, but all hindsight and all answers were right going forward, right? Like that's the one big thing that I had to take from it, is every time I had to make one of those calls, and I think that everyone needs to understand that we don't know all the answers, we don't know everything, and that when you make one of those drastic life-changing decisions, like I had to make, my wife and I should say, had to make hundreds of times throughout this process, it was always the right answer for the information that we had. Yeah. And the situation going forward, and you can't look back and ever say, no, I was wrong on that. So we accepted a phase 1 trial in LA that we qualified for, and it actually it actually prolonged her for a while, and it gave us some more time with her, which is all we were really looking for. And we ended up renting an Airbnb in LA, downtown LA, which was quite the experience. If you've ever been to LA, it's kind of like we were talking about London before, man. It's an interesting city. Man. My 9-year-old son learned a lot about the world and people and transgender and just all the wonderful things that LA brings, and the cultures, which I love. I mean, all of it's great. Like I'm all about, if anything's good for you, like it doesn't hurt yourself or others, go after it, man. Like live your life to the fullest in every way you can. And I've definitely come out from that view from a lot of this, right? But we lived in LA for a while, and then we got that phase 1 trial, and at the end of July of 2017, she had a seizure that pretty much made her, I don't know the right word, just not able to be mobile. And she started to really go downhill from there to where she really couldn't function anymore. And then that's where we left that phase of treatment, and we had to make that decision. And so she had a huge seizure, code blue, sent us to the PIC ICU. They told us she would pass within 20 to 48 hours. That they'd given her every medicine that they had in the hospital, and that we could keep giving her ketamine, and then it would help. I don't think it was ketamine. It might not have been that. It was, so don't quote me on that, but it was one of the seizure medications they could keep giving her, and it would bring her back for times for us to spend with her, but it would continue to destroy her body. And that would only last for 20 to 48 hours. So we'd give her a couple hours with her, and then she'd go into it again. We get a couple hours with her, and she'd go into it again. And that's when we asked, can we give her CBD oil? And they said, well, I'm not going to be in the room for like the next hour. And CBD oil is completely legal. The CBD oil we gave her was 1,000% legal in all cases. We had been giving her cannabis, and she did have her own medical card prior to that, but we stopped the cannabis during the phase 1 trial because we really were looking for the efficacy of the phase 1 trial and all of its wholeness for all the other kids that it may be able to help in the future. And so we felt that was the right thing to do. But when she started having these seizures, and I think maybe giving her the CBD oil may have actually prevented those seizures from ever actually happening. So there's not another medicine we give her in the hospital. She's going to die in 24 to 48 hours. We gave her CBD oil. Within a minute and a half, her seizures stopped, and she lived for 2.5 more months.
Wow.
So you can do all the science you want to do in the world, but there's something behind cannabis, right? And so
I was going to say, yeah, you see that. You see that in lots of examples of people using the CBD oil to treat cancers and epilepsy as well. People
absolutely.
But still, there's less of a reluctance over in America than there is here in the UK.
Such a stigma with it in the UK,
cannabis. Yeah.
Yeah, we were giving her THC as well. So we had a pretty we were a 1-to-1 CBD to THC level, and then we were also giving her THCA, which is a non-psychedelic version of THC that doesn't make you as high. Sure. But we worked her levels up to a pretty high dose for a little kid. I mean, she was taking a lot of cannabis a day. And what's funny is the doctors weren't fans at all, or some of them didn't know necessarily but we were legal to do it, right? Like we had all of the right documentation. We got her the card. We purchased it from the right people. All the things that needed to be done the right way to make sure we covered ourselves in all ways. And she was taking 300 milligrams of THC a day. And she was 36 pounds. But it also shows what the human body can actually take when you build it up in the appropriate ways. The proper dosing through a naturopathic doctor to actually be able to do those things. And it was crazy that the doctors would say, wow, her body rebounds like nobody we've ever seen before. And we're like, oh, funny how that works, huh? But yet that's the same doc that wouldn't let me give it to her.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, like just from that snippet of your life, okay. Mm-hmm. First of all, Audrey, what a great name! Right, such a beautiful name.
Thanks,
but what a little warrior! What a little warrior! And it's so Audrey was 3.
She was 3 when she got diagnosed, and she was almost 6 when she passed.
Right. So absolutely. So she absolutely smashed it out of the park for how long she could, and obviously you guys made. You say you made the decisions, and the big thing to take away from that is you don't take no for an answer. And when it's your own child, so my boy's 4 years old. I would stop at absolutely nothing. I would do time for him, and that's the bottom line. So, hearing what you did and how much you battled, that should be the way every parent, every adult should fight it, because as great work as all the doctors do, I've seen it firsthand that when a doctor's treating somebody, they are so desensitized sometimes. It's just a patient. It's not a person as such. It's not a human. So there was a point my little boy cracked his head open. We were prattling around. He ran into a door frame. The door frame won.
Right.
So he split his head open. It was all flapping everywhere. He was a brave little boy. I bandaged him up, took him to hospital. Now, when he was in there, the doctors, they came in and they were really rough, like cleaning the wound so they could see if they had to stitch it or glue it. And I was sat behind the doctor, and I seen, my boy's called Dexter. I seen Dexter looking, like crying his eyes out. And we had that moment where he looked at me as if to say, why are you letting this happen?
Right.
So I literally got up and I apologized after to the doctor, but I got in between the doctor and his assistant, and I just pushed them away. And I stood over Dexter and I said to them, he's a little boy. Like, I know you're doing what you need to, but be gentle, listen to him. And then that was it. I didn't leave Dexter's side. So from a parent's point of view, that's what you need to do. And that is, don't take no for an answer. And you push as hard as you can push, because by the sounds of it, you pushed to the level you could, and Audrey, bless her little heart, pushed even further. She carried on. And that shows you the human body, and with that love and determination, who can tell you you're wrong?
And you have to shoot for the fences, right? Like there's no regrets at the end of the day, right? If I go out swinging, I go out swinging. And I think that's the mentality we took from the beginning. We're going to do everything and anything we can, and we're in such an interconnected world that that you can't just rely on the medicine that's here. There's some wild stuff going all over the world, where the stem cells in Panama, or I ended up traveling for dentistry after everything. Like, you can go all over this world and get amazing services that you can't just lock yourself into the one little box anymore. You have to look bigger. And those are the things that we did, and so, and I think that exactly what you said, you have to be adequate, right? But the whole time that we went through all this, almost 2+ years, I had to work the entire time. I had to keep a job. I had to keep insurance. She billed out over $2.5 million in medical bills. $40,000 a dose for 40-year-old chemo. Why the hell does it cost that much?
Yeah.
Right, for a kid. And she's staying 4 or 5 weeks at a time in the hospital. $1,100 a night in the oncology. Like, why does it cost that much? And so, like,
I'll never understand the way that you guys do medical care over in the States. My wife's in the background. She just went, "That's disgusting."
Yeah, I mean, it truly is, man. Luckily, we had good insurance, man, and I worked for an absolutely amazing company that had my back all the way, right? And I worked my butt off just as much as I fought for Audrey, and I turned some record quarters and was able to, be able to keep everything afloat through all of that. I was reading back through the blog today, like I said, just to kind of refresh my mind a little bit, since it's been a while. And a couple of those, I was like, watching her do chemo and trying to catch up on all my emails. And it's just what you do. Yeah. And as a dad, and moms do too, so no disrespect to that, but on a dad show, we end up holding a lot of that sometimes, and we feel that specifically it's ingrained in us that we have to do everything we can, right? We have to keep the family together. We have to fight for, in this situation, my daughter. I have to figure out how I'm going to stay employed so that I keep insurance. I got to figure out how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to, pay for 4 months at $7,200 a month Airbnb rent in LA? I have to figure out how I'm going to take the family to Houston for 6 weeks to get radiation that costs some astronomical amount, right? Yeah. And again, luckily the insurance covers a lot of that. And after $1 million a year, each hospital generally quits billing you. But we went to multiple hospitals, right? So those numbers continue to add up if you're not at the one hospital getting over $1 million worth of care. And then the insurance, like dealing with the claim insurance, I was at collections. They said I owed $7,200 for some procedure in Houston, and I knew I didn't owe $7,200, so I spent probably 6 hours on the phone with my insurance company talking to their billing people and me just hanging out listening, and ended up owing $87. And then another time, somebody sent me to collections and they owed me $93. And so, like, I just recently saw a book that says "Never pay the first bill" was, I think, the title of the book, and it was regard to medical billing. And that couldn't be more right. Like, I fought every bill to the death, man, because I had so many.
Yeah. But what a waste of energy that is. Like,
and time away from my daughter, time too, right? Like,
I mean, there's not a lot of things that this country gets right, but the NHS is definitely one of them. Because I couldn't imagine having to deal with what you were dealing with, because obviously, and again, not to say it's different for women, but for men, we have to keep everything together. We pay the bills, we run the family, we're the head of. Everyone looks to us as the
provider,
the provider. Not even
the patriarch,
that,
right?
Yeah, but not even financially. More stability, strength. So you've got to try and keep all that together, as well
holding
as
your shit together. Sometimes it could be rough, right? You got to hold it all, man. You can't look like you're weak in the situation. You can't be tired and not tell that doctor no when you got to tell him no. And you got to make sure, like, for my boy who's going along the entire way, he's got to see I'm strong. He doesn't, I can't show to him that I'm worried about his sister dying every moment of every day. You just got to get through those pieces.
Yeah, and so trying to deal with that, as well as the medical side of it, as the pressures of it, and like you say, 6 hours on a phone call for a bill for $82.
I mean, it's nuts, man. They're killing my credit for it. I had 2.5 years, two and a quarter years with my daughter from the time she got diagnosed with cancer. I wanted to spend every minute of that when she wanted to hanging out. And instead, I'm spending time on the phone dealing with this kind of stuff. And that's like super frustrating, man. And then I would say that all the stuff that I've talked about was hard. And that's definitely, not what anybody would ever want to go through. But after she passed, that's when shit got deep.
Yeah.
I mean,
that moment.
How old was your son?
9.
9.
When she passed.
I mean, obviously for you guys, for your wife and yourself, obviously really, really tough. But then you kind of, I imagine, without subconsciously doing it, you kind of forget, what's this little 9-year-old going through? How's he feeling? What's he taking in from this? Because it's not a circumstance anybody would ever be, you're not taught those sort of things, and this is how you must act, and this is how your parents are going to act when this situation happens, because you never want that situation. So you never, ever speak about things like that. So so how was your boy? How was your son?
I mean, to be honest, I think for probably a good 3 or 4 months, I was in such a black hole of nothingness that, he got through. We gave him, the necessities. He had a shelter, he had food, he had anything he needed. Obviously, we got him a counselor, and he, thank God we did that for him. And I wholeheartedly believe in counseling and mental health. And without that, we definitely wouldn't be the people we wouldn't have gotten out of the darkness as quickly and as and I wouldn't say quickly, but as transitioned as we did. And it definitely paid huge dividends in regards to that, to at least get him through the point where I could start taking over again. And I was, at least starting to get to where I could get my head above the water to start checking in on him. And, it's only been 4 years. And I said it's only been 4 years, and that, we're coming up on 5. And it obviously is still a very deep wound that we're continually working our way through. But, in those instances, we were able to just get through it. And for me, I turned to books, and I don't remember why. Honestly, and I think if I look back, I started listening to podcasts. Like, I was in such this dark, deep, shitty spot, man. Like, it's the whole like the pit of despair, right? Like, there's a billion analogies you could have, but I'm in the deepest, darkest hole, and I don't know what to do, right? Like, I don't know, like, the only reason that I think I even chose to come out of that hole was for my son, right? Like, I didn't need to live anymore for me. Like, I'm good. Like, I've been through all this stuff. And, there's moments where you look back and you're like, well, he still needs a dad. And You know,
and again, another pressure, isn't it? It's another thing that's then thrown onto you as the dad, as the, you know, that hierarchy as such. You know, you've got to go, right, hang on, push my shit aside again, focus on this part now. And it's that we spoke about it on quite a few podcasts now. It's how we accept that in our head and what we do to then deal with that. Because you could have just gone, that's it, my blinkers are on, whatever I can't see past here, I don't give a shit about, I don't care. And then obviously all that destruction and despair outside of that, you just carry on your path. But for you to be able to go, right, hang on, my son needs me. He needs his dad.
And well, that happened for a while. He needs his dad alive. That was the more the key to the story at the moment, right? Like, I'm still paying the bills. I'm still in my dark craziness. I'm playing crap tons of Rocket League. Just trying to, you know, take my mind off everything. I do run Rocket League. It's my guilty obsession. It's literally like one of the crutches that I use to get through everything, right? I'd get into Rocket League and I wouldn't have to think about anything else other than that 5-minute game. And then I could go do something else. Like, if something got really bad, I jump into Rocket League and I spend 15 minutes in there. I think about playing Rocket League, and then I come out and I deal with whatever I had to deal with. It's the, you know, eventually later on I learned how to do meditation and headspace and like how to like get my mind out of the thinking loops that they are. But, you know, I jumped on YouTube and I started listening to some phenomenal mentors out there. You know, Jay Shetty, I don't know if you guys know him. He's a great guy. Yeah. And, you know, it's different thing. I just listened again to his book. I think it Live Like a Monk. Title might be off, but it's a phenomenal book, right? And it says everything he always talks about on YouTube. But then I think I found him, and then through him I found Tom Bilyeu, Impact Theory, which he was a guest on. And if you guys haven't watched Impact Theory, it's awesome. He introduces you to just the most amazing minds in the world, like Sudhguru, who's a guy that just wrote the book on karma. And he wrote another book prior to that, which was life changing. And through all these people he was interviewing, they all had books, right? And I'm like, whoa, what are these books, right? Simon Sinek, love that guy. So his 2 favorite books, Finite Infinite Games and Man's Search for Meaning. So Finite Infinite Games, man, that is a hard book. That is a hard book. I've listened to it 3 or 4 times. I get the concepts. I don't think I understand the book. But I'm going to listen to it some more, and we're going to get through that one. But Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning is a book that first showed me, okay, all the things that I just talked about were absolutely horrible, and they hurt to go through, and they were just absolutely horrible. But Viktor Frankl lived through concentration camps, was in Auschwitz, and was freed, and so like the first half of the book is his struggle and all of the things he saw in every moment, like where they're like, go this way in line and go this way in line. You're the every other. If you're the dude behind because you were tying your shoe, you went to the gas chambers. If you were the guy that got ahead, you got saved. And like what that mental shift was, and like as he's a psychologist going into all of this. So like he already has all these tools to understand why the mind is thinking what it's thinking. And then he created logotherapy from that, right? And logotherapy is really logo meaning, right? It's the idea of finding meaning for our lives. And as humans, our minds are built in a way that we have to have meaning, right? Like without meaning, we get stuck in a pit of despair. Like we have to have a direction, and without that direction, we can't find anywhere. So, and one of the things he says, I paraphrase, I'm sure, is he talks about how suffering seems to cease to be suffering when it finds meaning, right? And there's more to that, but in the gist of that, how I take it for me and what I got out of it was, hey, I need to figure a way that something I can do with me, something I can do with this situation, with all the stuff that we just talked through, in a way that's maybe beneficial for somebody else, right? If one person hears this podcast, and which is exactly why you got started the podcast, and everybody does. If one person hears this podcast and goes, damn, my life doesn't suck as bad as I thought it does. This guy, he's happy. He's on the other side of it. My career is going well now. You know, the family's doing the best that it can. The boy is very much, you know, excelling in life. You know, we're traveling. We've been all over the world. We've done a lot of things, and there's a lot of had to go through, but so many amazing moments. You know, the trip to Disney, Anthony Rizzo, the first baseman for the Cubs, also is a pediatric cancer survivor. He actually got diagnosed shortly after he was drafted to the MLB, and fought it and beat it. He had one of those great cancers that we know well, but he's a strong guy, and people still get lost from that. So it's not a minimal thing at all. And he went through some very, very bad stuff to get through it, right? It's a poison body to live, but he understands the fight, and he actually helped us with some expenses along the way. And just an amazing dude, man. I cannot say enough great things. He came by to see Audrey because obviously he fell in love with her like everybody else. He came by to the house one day and just spent an afternoon with us and just hung out. Her and the mascot, of course. And those highs, and my boy got to see that, right? And then after she passed, the Cubs, to her services, sent flowers, and the mascot came out of suit. Who we become really good friends. Me, the guy in the suit, and he's just a great guy. Got a great heart, and just loved on our family. And he came to the services and talked about us maybe being able to attend a baseball game. So we lived our life through baseball that year. Shortly after she passed, we went to a Diamondbacks game here, which was an NLDS, National League Division Series game, so playoffs, right? And then we saw the Dodgers go play the Cubs. And then my company was based out of Chicago. My boss was also with the services, and the two of them were talking. They're like, I think you need to come to Chicago and get back in with a company you haven't really been able to engage lately. So when you're ready, there happens to be an NLCS championship game that you need to come see. So we went to that, and that was awesome. And then shortly after that, when we were in Houston, we met Javier Bracamonte, who's a bullpen catcher for the Houston Astros, another guy with a huge heart. And I got to level that guy just loved on our family and wonderful, and said, hey, I think someone down here would like to sponsor you guys to come to a World Series game. And so we got to go to a World Series game. And you also, well, my boy was, the game was on Sunday. He turned 10 on Monday, and the game went until like 1 a.m. So technically we like to say he turned 10 at the World Series. So you have to look at the brighter side of things. You can dwell on all the stuff in life, and I can continue to cry and weep and whine and not be a productive member of society and not talk about my experiences. Or, I can share them, and I can have real conversations with people. And, since we've gone through that and we've had some separation of that, I've been on calls with families that just got diagnosed to talk to them and give them some guidance and say, hey, man, you're going to be able to do this. I know it sucks right now. I know that nothing feels good, but we're going to get through this, and I've had some calls with people later in the journey and being like, when that time comes and you need to have a conversation about transition from care to hospice, and then from hospice to that next step. Unfortunately, I'm the guy that knows, and I just want you to know that I'm willing to have that conversation with you. I'm willing to be there with you for that. I'm willing to be anything you need me in that. If you need to understand, how to plan services, like, how to get a mortician for your kid, like all of those things that you don't think about, and like that struggle that you experience with your mom, right? Like you go from this treatment to hospice to death, and in that hospice phase, you're watching, they're going to die.
Yeah.
But you're still wanting to do everything you can to keep them here, but they're going to die. And you're just keeping them comfortable enough to it's so hard, man. And so just being able to have this conversation with them and just peel back the onion, I think is super important and something that I've always wanted to do. People tell me to write a book. I like to speak. I don't like to write. I have written that blog, so I think that, someday that can be converted. Audrey Noel.
What is the blog, Ira?
Yeah, it's audreynoelle.com. It's AudreyNoelle.com. And the homepage is pretty much every blog post I ever made from the very beginning all the way to the end. It's an account of our life. Just
going back on to what you're doing now for other families, it's just such an amazing thing that you're doing, and like you say, there's no experience like a lived experience. So the fact that you can help and try and guide people through who are going through at that point for them, such a traumatic experience is hats off to you, mate, for being able to do that. It's just super strong.
I think we have to, though, right? Like there's no other option for me, and I think for other people obviously would be, but for me, there's no other option. Again, Viktor Frankl, suffering ceases to become suffering when it finds meaning, and I have to find some meaning in it. And if that's the meaning, I'd love to public speak on it. I got to get some, talk tracks around what I'd like to public speak about, the things I've learned. And again, I've read tons of books since then and I really like to read on mental health. Like, why do we think what we think? The lizard brain, the mammalian brain, the evolved brain, just flow state, Stephen Kotler, all those guys are doing amazing research on flow state and how we think, why we do what we do, how we feel what we feel, why action sport guys are in the flow or where they're at. there's just so many amazing science out there that, and I've only really been diving into this whole mental health world and reading and just ingesting data for the last 3 years. So, of that, I'm excited to see what comes of it.